I started a company called Ready App, which is behind me. It's all about speed. It's all about onboarding. It's about driver verification, processing applications, and doing it with efficiency. So, with our app, drivers only have to fill out the application, upload their profile. They only have to do it once. With our competition, they got to fill out that DOT application 7 to 10 times a week. With us, it's done one time. They have to upload their documents. They have to, send their CDL, their medical card, their social, numerous times to several different companies to get it through the hiring process. With us, they only have to do it one time. It's all about speed. So I saw your app, and it's like you can do it in a matter of minutes, right?
Dude, seconds. So we always say you can't order a coffee fast enough.
That's
Like
right. That's
that's
what you
the yeah,
said.
you
Yeah.
know what I mean. So it's but I mean the key to all this is creating a frictionless environment. In the trucking company, there's all the brokers and everybody's trying to move this stuff, get their hand in the pot. We did a trip, 2 years ago. It was seven brokers involved in the trip.
Hmm.
Nothing wrong against brokers, but seven. What was a $21,000 private jet trip turned into 39. So $18,000 difference that
Wow.
Wow.
somebody had their hand in. It's like, hey, we're not a .org, totally fine. We're gonna make money, but 18,000 on a $21,000 trip is a little steep. So creating that
For sure.
frictionless environment is key. Doing it efficient, fast, and obviously having that information in the app. Imagine just sitting there with your wife and going, "Hey, honey, our airplane's there. Look, it's on the app. It's right here." No different than if you go into a Tampa Bay Lightning game.
Right.
As you're
Oh, I
heading to the
got.
game, you've
Yep.
got the app, and the app says, "Hey, we're
Hmm.
going to this gate. This is our seat. Whatever."
Yep.
You have the ability to do that now on the private jet side. That just hasn't existed. You've got to call Jack and go, "Jack, what's my airplane? Where's it at?" I called the FBO, and the lady said it's not there. And then it's like, well, it's sitting on the ramp. The lady hadn't looked outside. She's doing 50 million other things. She's not worried about your airplane. If we can eliminate that, that allows you, the end user, to have a better experience.
Right.
Um, so then it
Absolutely.
happens to be not even about aviation. How can you have a better experience? We're a
Oh,
global luxury brand, happens to be in aviation that happens to have technology. I mean, we love swag, obviously. So people say, "Are you guys in the apparel business?" Well, we might be.
it might be. I
You
Exactly.
love
know,
your upside down hats. You need to send me one of those.
gotcha. No problem.
Let's just go ahead and keep the conversation going. We've been talking with Jack Lambert, CEO of FlyHouse, company redefining private aviation and how leaders think about movement itself. We're doing something a little bit different today, Justin. Getting out of trucking a little bit, but it still fits. It's all about
Most definitely.
continuous movement. We used to preach in our days as agents about continuous movement, keeping that truck running. Jack does the same thing with planes and makes it simple. So thanks for joining us, Jack.
No,
Yeah.
I
Appreciate you
Glad to
appreciate it,
having
have
me.
you
boys.
on.
Thank you.
Before we get started, we want to thank our sponsors. Of course, it makes this show go. First one's Gray Cross. Gray Cross supports families who lose loved ones suddenly on the American highways. Gray Cross will step in immediately with help with groceries, rent, utilities, support, a funeral cost, anything they can do to help that family through the tough time. So learn more at graycross.org.
Yeah, 40,000 people die on our highways every year. It's unbelievable.
Exactly.
Wow.
So that sudden loss of income, it hits hard, and we want to do whatever we can to help. So check out graycross.org. Our second sponsor is Ready App. Ready App helps drivers avoid application fatigue by completing their profile once, storing documents in one place, and applying for jobs with just a few clicks. Drivers can keep everything for onboarding, DOT inspections, and soon individual driver verification to help eliminate fraud.
Jack, like I said, great to have you on. We appreciate you taking the time. Before FlyHouse, before the aviation, before you became the CEO, what shaped your life into becoming the CEO that you are today?
Yeah. So I started out from a small town in East Point, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta, and grew up in a single family home. My dad was a cop. Grew up playing sports. That's just really been my life. Went to college, played three sports, was captain of all three, got into the Hall of Fame, a few years after college. So sports has kind of defined me to who I am, and it's kind of allowed me to give me the opportunity that I have today. in aviation. And so very thankful for the opportunity that my parents put forth, give me the opportunity to play sports.
Where did you go to college at?
Went to UMass Boston.
Oh, okay. Okay.
UMass Boston. Okay. Yeah, my dad went to Salem State.
Salem State. Oh yeah.
Salem State. So let's cut through some of the noise. Let's talk about this. Most executives that we speak to, they fly first class, right? They sit in lounges. Most buddies of mine, they think that flying private is out of their reach. They're not wealthy, but they do make a good living. They're flying first class everywhere they go. They've got status with their airline of choice. So why should they consider somebody like FlyHouse?
Well, listen, I mean, we're not going to compare or compete with first class. What we are is we're going to elevate that to another level.
Okay.
But with our friend share feature on the app, you have the ability to download the app in seconds, and then basically add your friends to the app, create whatever group you want. So you're part of your church group, your country club, whatever group you have, you can download, add your friends to the group and literally split that cost within minutes on the
Oh,
app.
nice.
And it's not just, hey, you know what, Justin, you're the guy with the money. I'll get you next time. It's, hey, let's chop this up at dinner right now, and you can pay for it. So I'm not doing Venmo, not doing Cash App, not doing the check. We'll send you a wire. It's always, I'll get you next time,
Yeah.
and that next time never comes. And by the way, the next trip is going to be 2 hours shorter. So
That's right.
it's never going to even out. So it's like,
Right.
hey, why not? Let's get on the app. Let's book it. So 8 guys want to go on a golf trip. 4 couples want to go to New York City to see the tree lighting. Whatever the story is, you have the ability to chop that up. That's expanding the TAM, and that drives that cost down. And of course, what FlyHouse's whole entire model is taking the 90% of the operators that have less than 10 airplanes, taking that, basically bringing them together, fuel, maintenance, driving those costs down. If we do that for the owner, we can do that for the consumer. We can increase lift. We can increase lift. We got more airplanes flying around. That gives you more optionality.
So you're actually helping both sides of the industry, from the consumer to the fleet owners. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that so the consumers kind of understand? Because I don't want them to just think you own a bunch of jets and you're trying to have your own airline. Can you go into that a little bit more detail?
Yeah. So the way the charter industry has worked for years, and still works today, is obviously why we're has started FlyHouse. The consumer never talks to the owner operator of the airplane, and so that creates
Okay.
a level here that's a lot of friction. So because they never talk to them, you can't get to that owner because of the fluff, because you don't have the marketing budget to market to that end user. So then you have to go through a third party. Nothing wrong with a third party, but that lacks transparency. And so we're trying to deliver safety, service, and being transparent. And it's very difficult to do that when you have two sides that never talk. And so we've eliminated that with the app.
Okay.
But in normal thing, you'd actually have to call somebody. So I'm going to call Justin, right? And I'm going to say, Justin, need airplane. Justin's going to call somebody else who has an airplane. For whatever reason, that airplane breaks. Now Justin's got to call somebody else. Well, while Justin's calling somebody, the guy that he originally booked with is calling somebody too. So you have a lot of this friction, all this friction in the middle. The app FlyHouse solves that by connecting the two together.
And talk about safety a little bit. Now, my wife swears, she's like, when I fly private, that's the day I'm going to die. She's nervous.
Yeah.
How do you guys deal with safety? How do you make sure that your jets are in tip-top shape before they take off?
I think a big part of safety is culture, right?
Hmm.
So getting people to buy into the culture, that requires a behavior change. What you've seen in the industry is you've kind of got these mom and pops around, and what happens is you have a company that doesn't have the money to hire a safety officer. So then they, hey Justin, we're going to pay you an extra 10 grand a year to be a safety guy. Well, that's not really safe. That
Yeah,
doesn't
right.
make you
Right.
safe.
Right.
Safe comes from the culture, and the culture inside the business. So everybody has to operate under that same standard. And so right now in the industry, you have a lot of different standards. Justin, you got your standard. I got my standard, right? John, you got your standard. We all have these
Yep.
different standards. If we
Trucking
can
deals
create
with the
one,
same thing.
you got
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so everybody has this, and so now you creating friction. You got more hands in the pot.
Right.
How do we
Mhm.
create one standard, bring everybody together where everybody wins? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter who flies in the back of my airplane. The only thing that matters is, am I going to get paid?
Hmm.
Right. So it doesn't matter what you're putting in the back of your truck. It's just, are you going to get paid? And then when you get to that next stop, what's going to happen after the next stop? Right. That's the worry. That's the saw. But you got to get the culture built from day one. And that's culture internally. And then you take that culture internally, they're going to preach that gospel externally, which is going to bring everybody together. But in terms of the actual safety, to actually get into the nuts and bolts, it's actually visiting, seeing the operations. If you can't operate under standard, no big deal. You just don't come. You don't belong in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to have that, creating those advisory boards, the advisory boards are so key because it can't just be Jack says you're out of the house. Hey, we've all agreed that we've given you the steps and the tools to make you successful and to make you safe and told you exactly what you need to do. If you don't follow that, that's on you. We've all agreed that you can't belong in the house.
So do you pre-qualify these jets? Are you
We
like,
do.
okay, so
And
talk a
it's
little bit
not, and
about
again,
that.
it's not just the jets, it's the actual,
And the
again, going back to
pilots?
the
Pilots and
pilots, it's the company culture. Because we can pay $15,000, put a seal on our website and say we're safe. But
Mhm.
that doesn't mean the
right.
culture is safe. So all that auditing stuff for the airplane, the pilots, the actual company, all that's done internally to be able to justify that, hey, to the external world, we're safe.
We're talking about the same thing on the trucking side right now, with Ready App. We're talking about how, these carriers are vetted. Think of it, in aviation, like United Airlines is vetted. They're being looked at. Their safety standards are being looked at. The passengers on the plane, so the product that you're putting on the truck is being looked at,
Mhm.
but no one's looking at who the actual pilot is. No one's looking at who that driver is behind the truck. They're counting on United to make sure that that pilot is good, to go back to aviation. They're counting on that. But because what you talked about just a minute ago, safety standards are different, everywhere. There's no just one, size fits all, which there should be. No one's vetting that. No one's making sure that that driver actually is who he says he is at the time of pickup. So at the time of takeoff in aviation, no one knows who's sitting behind that plane. So it's a big problem.
Right. But there's a trust factor that, hey, it's United and we're
Yep,
trusting that
Right.
they're doing it. So we're putting a
exactly.
lot of trust in it.
A lot.
Planes don't fall out of the sky. Well,
Yep,
I don't know the numbers. Over 97, 8, 98% of all accidents is pilot failure.
right.
But yet the last thing we look at is the pilot, to your point. But again, it's a behavior, it's a thought process, and that starts, from hiring, having the actual, in aviation we call it in doc. Spend the time with the people prior, at hiring and prior to, before they get on the line, before they get on the streets, to justify that, hey, you're dialed in.
Speaking of the safety side, the trucking industry, we're going through a time right now where the government is finally starting to get involved a little bit more on the safety. I think the government has kind of just taken trucking for granted for quite a while. I know probably in y'all's industry after 9/11, safety constraints, checking out pilot license, things of that nature, probably got a little bit stricter. But what do you see on the aviation side of the government? Because, like I said, the trucking industry, I think, needs to be more tight. And there's a lot of things that they're trying to do now, but it's always that knee jerk reaction. They don't want to do anything until something bad happens, which happened in trucking down in Florida. And that's kind of triggered it. Where, with aviation, like you said, there's not plane crashes every day. Thank goodness. It's a very safe industry when you look at the numbers. But is there anything that you see that the government's doing or something that you would like the government to try to help with that?
Well, great point. I think the biggest issue the industry has is really no barrier to entry. Justin, you got a cell phone. We all have cell phones.
Hmm.
Well, you know a guy with an airplane. You know Jack now. So guess what?
Right.
You can go Justin Aviation. You got yourself a
We're,
business.
that's right.
That's
That's no
true.
barrier to entry. But you want to
No.
go
That's
sell
true.
a $10,000 piece of property? Guess what? You got to go to school. You got to be licensed. There's none of that in aviation. It's coming. I think it's late, but that's only one part of it. Then it becomes the accountability, the enforcement of that. In order to sell an airplane, meaning in order to manage an airplane, from a charter standpoint, you have to have a certificate. It's similar to like a license, but the FAA deems that certificate legal. But then you have people that, run airplanes around the country. That's illegal. You have an airplane, Justin. You can't go sell it to John on the side just because you own it. It has to be managed. That's the difference between 91, which is owner usage, and then 135, which is actually for hire. But there's a lot of people that have an airplane and go, oh, yeah, because you're the guy with the airplane. Everybody wants to be your friend. It's like a boat,
Yeah.
got a lot of friends. Guy with a boat's got a lot of friends.
Yeah.
So same type of scenario, but there's no barrier to entry in that, right? So the regulatory side is very difficult. In order to maintain a standard, I've got to have a chief pilot. I've got to have a director of maintenance. I've got to have a director of operations. If you want to be safe, then you got to have a director of safety. So the regulation has held that, but on the brokerage side, you got a cell phone, you're good to go. And again, nothing wrong against brokers. You guys have that in the trucking industry, but on the
Right.
aviation side, I think when I started, there might have been 10.
Now there's a lot of
There's
hands in that cookie jar.
3,000 people.
Wow.
We call them bathroom brokers.
We call them basement brokers in
Right.
trucking.
So hey,
Yeah.
the basement or
Same thing.
bathroom. I
Yeah.
got you.
Exactly.
So very similar. So go into a little bit about, the beginning when you first got in, knew that you wanted to get into aviation, what's gone into building a business as an entrepreneur. We have a lot of young professionals that listen, especially on the logistics side of things, that are fairly successful, but they're deciding, do I move up the ranks? Do I, climb the ladder, so to speak? Or do I branch out on my own and, start a brokerage, start a 3PL, so on and so forth?
Well, I mean, listen, I think a big part of it is just it's the mentality. I mean, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I was given a job. That job was to go out and find seats. So
Yep.
you guys had all the asses in the world, but I had to go find the seats. I kind of went back in first, and then that made it much easier for me to go sell the front end because I knew how it all worked.
Yep.
So when I started out, I didn't have any airplanes. I had to go find them, and I did that for a couple years, and then went and ran a couple charter companies from a sales perspective. 1 month, I literally on the side, I just screwed around and made 90 grand. And what I did was I was out finding airplanes. So you laugh. I knew where the airplanes were. Nobody else knew where they were. So people would call me and go, "Hey, Jack, I got this airplane in New York. It needs to go to Florida." Well, then John calls and goes, "Hey, I need to go to Florida." I go, "Oh, great. Gotcha. Make 3 grand." I'm like, "Dude, I got to work. Once every 3 days, make 3 grand. This is great." So I worked 10 days in a month and made 30 grand. I made 90 grand 1 month. My boss goes, "Hey, that was a great month. What'd you do?" I go, "I just fucked around." They go, "Really?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, why don't you give yourself $5,000?" I go, "Really? $5,000 on 90 grand?" I called a buddy and I go, "I need 40 grand right now. I need $500,000 line of credit, and I give you 50% of the company." The next month, I made $76,000. I'm like, this is crazy. So
Yeah.
first 2005, started my business, bought a house, had a kid, and bought a car, all in the same month. Guy calls up and goes, "Hey, I got this guy who needs to do this trip." I quoted him 59.7. I got the trip for 58.5. I asked the guy, "What do you want?" He goes, "Oh, you got some water, snacks, all that stuff." "Yeah, all good." He says, "Can you get the Wall Street Journal?" I said, "Yeah, no problem. Wall Street Journal, great." Go to the airplane, ask the pilots, "Hey, you guys got the Wall Street Journal?" He goes, "Oh, Jack, we got the New York Times. We went to 7 stores." I said, "Hey, don't worry about it." Guy gets on the airplane, does the flight, calls me the next day and says, "Jack, I got to tell you, that was the best flight I've ever had. By the way, this guy's on 760 airplanes. This guy's telling me it's the best flight he ever had." He said, "But I got a question." He said, "Did I ask for something?" And I said, "Well, no." He said, "You sure?" And I go, "Oh, that's right. You asked for the Wall Street Journal." He said, "Did you get me the Wall Street Journal?" I said, "No, sir. We got you the New York Times." He goes, "Did you call and tell me you didn't do that?" I said, "No, sir." He said, "Well, that's a hard lesson to learn, isn't it?" He said, "If you're going to tell somebody to do something, Jack, you better do it. And if you
Better do it.
can't, no big deal. Just
Mhm.
tell me you can't do it."
Right.
He didn't pay me that money for 2 years. Almost lost my house, lost everything.
Wow.
Thank God I didn't.
Wow.
Yeah.
Paid me 2 years later. And by the way, he booked 100 trips between then. Wired me money, wired me money. Get to dinner and he slides the envelope across the table and it says, "I hope you learned your lesson." And then he paid me $30,000 more than I quoted.
Yeah.
But I'm like, man, I
Mm.
call my dad. I'm like, you're not gonna believe this. He goes, son, I've been telling you for years, if you're gonna be late past 10, just call me. You
Just
could never
call.
call me.
That's
You know,
true.
Yeah.
so it's just one of
We're
those
all
hard
guilty
lessons.
of
But
it. Yeah.
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
but it was just one of those lessons where you're like, man, this is life. I mean, I'm fighting tooth and nail just to make ends meet. But it taught me a lesson that, hey, at the end of the day, shoot, we can change our name now. I didn't know you could do that then, but you can't change your word. That's what you
Mhm.
got. You got,
Right.
and because this is such a relationship business, you've got to have that. If you don't have that, then you lose your reputation. Once you lose your reputation, it's over. But to your point, somebody getting in the business, I laugh about it because I was like, you got to keep your head on a swivel. You never know in this business what's going to hit you because it's such a difficult business. It's a sexy business. I'm sitting here, I'm talking about it. I love it,
Mhm.
but it's so freaking hard. Why? Because I'm relying on other people to make me money, right?
Yeah.
So I'm putting an ass in a seat and I'm relying on those two pilots to get that guy from point A to point B. Then I'm relying on the guy fueling the airplane. Then I'm relying on the guy on maintaining it. By the way, you do the trip and I can't even get the guy the right paper on board. So now I'm relying on that. We'll do a trip and the catering gets messed up. $60,000 trip and the trip's the worst trip he ever had. You know, the car shows up late before the trip. Gave the guy a double upgrade. He's flying in a G5 across the pond, and the car shows up late. Now the guy's got 5 hours on this, 6 hours on this airplane to tell me everything's wrong with the airplane. The amount of effort that we did to book this trip, and the guy shows up late because of a car has nothing to do with the trip. So then, you know, then when you start FlyHouse, and you're like, man, we've got to create a better experience where all parties win. The guy in the car has got to have the same intensity that the guy in the front of the plane does flying the airplane. Flight attendant. Every piece of this thing you can't control. So it makes it so difficult, but it's such a fun business. To your point earlier, you get to meet some amazing people.
You do get to meet you're not
That's
operating quietly behind the scenes. You're
that's
showing
right.
up on some of the
Right.
biggest stages. Look on your site, you're part of College Game Day, you're part of Monday Night Football. What's that like? You talk about, like messing up a catering job, it's cool to meet these athletes, right? It's cool to be front and center with these guys. I
Mhm.
know like my wife, she's on the foundation for Mike Evans for his nonprofit. And he's a great guy to work with, great guy to be around, a ton of fun, down to earth. But man, if something goes wrong at that event, my wife is on pins and needles until that event is over.
Right.
And so you got to feel some of that dealing with these people.
That's the probably the difficult, but probably the most fun part of this is that if you can't come across as genuine to these people, they
Mhm.
won't work with you. I mean, you
Right.
get one shot at this stuff, and I always
Right.
laugh, and people laugh at me because I'm like, hey, if you misspell an email and a word in the subject line, right, you get one shot at this stuff.
Mhm.
That's important.
Mhm.
That would cost you more than $50,000 on a trip because you won't get that customer again.
That's
That's
right.
right.
So you get
I
one
used to talk
shot.
to my employees. I'm like, they'd start a sentence with a lowercase letter. And
Yeah,
I'm like, you
exactly.
can't do that. So
Yeah.
you're right. You get one chance.
And you've got to control your narrative, right? You can't
Right.
control the other narrative. We give the example that the world's coming to an end, right? So
Yeah.
but you can't solve that world with your team if you can't solve your own world. But going back to the genuality of it, people understand you're going to make where nobody's perfect. It's how you respond to that mistake that will define who you are and who your company is. And so I was like, hey, I totally fine, make a mistake. It's are we going to learn from it, and then how do we better that, and then listen, if you can't communicate with that customer throughout that mistake and throughout that process, because a lot of people will run from the mistake
Mhm.
and kind of hide away from, hey, let's embrace it, let's fix it.
Talk about before we close out here, where do you see FlyHouse in the next 5 years? You talked about having a state-of-the-art app. AI is huge right now. Speed is everything. Where do you see your company going?
It's funny you say 5 years. We talk about 90 days.
Okay. Yeah.
The last 90 is different from the next 90.
Mhm.
But I'll tell you, in the next 3 years, our goal is to build this up. We've got a lot of verticals. We bought a bank in February. We have FlyHouse
Wow.
Insurance, FlyHouse Foundation, FlyHouse Maintenance. We're starting FlyHouse Studios. Ironically, you got the podcast because we're doing so much. we need vehicles to spread that gospel. In 3 to 5 years, listen, I think FlyHouse, we're going global. Our next step is Europe after the first quarter. Brazil, we've already been in talks to them. I was on the phone with the city council of Rwanda. They want FlyHouse in over there. So it's like there's so many opportunities. Time is the only thing we have against us. There's a lot of apps popping up now that, but again, people are only doing one thing of it. We've got an FBO. We actually manage our own airplanes. We own our own airplanes. We've got 2,000 airplanes on our app, just like you guys would have 2,000 trucks on your app, right? So being
You're
able to
building
do
a
that,
community.
100%. That's the key word, community. And then you got to be able to bring them together. Culture,
Right.
all that stuff fits in there. But we're not building it to hang on to it. We obviously, think there's a play here to sell it. And the big point that we like to make is, hey, we're giving our employees ownership. We're giving our partners. You can call it competitors. We call them partners because we want them in the house. And then we're giving our owners of the airplanes. So everybody in the ecosystem gets ownership. That builds that community and brings it tighter.
Yeah, that's awesome. Tell us what you said earlier. You said, and I don't want to butcher it, but it was like, you're not rich yet, like talk to those executives, those people who may not be high net worth individuals, but they're making, 200 to 300 grand. They can afford, they can afford some luxuries. Why should they consider FlyHouse? They may have never thought that they could get on a private jet.
Well, that's just it, right? I mean, it's aspirational, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to fly private.
Everybody.
And if you hadn't, you want to. And when you have, you want to fly more. When I talk to people, the one thing they won't give up is their private jet. They'll give up their boat. They won't give up their private jet. There's reasons for that. But, I think using the word aspirational is massive because we all aspire to do better, do bigger, do more. And so, as a CEO or an executive, to be able to give you the access we talked about, now you're aware of it, right? So now you're aware that it's an option. It's all about optionality. You have an option now. You have an option for that one trip a year to take your wife on a trip. And I think she would agree. And you have the option now you're aware of it. You have access to it. I'm giving you access, download the app. Now I'm giving you the speed of it. Now you can book this private jet in seconds. Okay. By the way, now you have control. If you go out and call somebody, you don't have control. They're picking the airplane for you. Now you have the ability to pick that airplane at the time. That hasn't existed until today at FlyHouse.
Awesome. What's your website?
It's goflyhouse.com. And we're on the Android and Apple platforms.
Well, thanks for coming on. Justin, you want to close us out?
Thank you, Jack, for coming on. We want to thank our listeners. Definitely want to thank one more time our sponsors, Gray Cross. And of course, they exist to help families, graycross.org. And of course, Ready App to help you with your verification, simplifying onboarding, and helping drivers make quick and easy decisions. That's ready-app.com.
Click like and subscribe. Learn from leaders that are actually doing the work. Jack, thanks for coming on. Stay ready for what's next, guys.
That's it. Let's fucking go.
Let's fucking go.
Let's fucking go.